Welcome to another edition of the SeedTime Living Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Lotich, and I brought Linda, my awesome wife, on today. And if you are listening to this, we are actually doing a video version, so you can check that out over on YouTube if you like, along with many other videos that we've done that haven't made it to the podcast. And if you're watching this, you can listen to the podcast in your car. So you can check that out on iTunes or anywhere else. But today we're going to talk about, I got a question from a reader that I thought would make for a really good one. And it kind of was asking me how I, and really we, got to where we are in terms of career and hearing God on career moves and trying to figure out how to get to where you want to go and things along those lines, right?
Yeah.
All right, and the question is this: how did you determine what direction to go with your career move? What feelings, thoughts, actions, passions led you to doing what you are currently doing? And how did God work in all of your decision-making process? And this is a really good question.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I think that you really seem to love your work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a more popular concept these days, although it's difficult to get there. So...
yeah, and I honestly spent many, many years not loving my work. I would say most of my career, I did not like my work, and a whole lot of it, I hated my work.
Yeah.
And I was actually found myself in many positions doing jobs I was not gifted to do, which is a terrible feeling when you are working really, really hard and you feel like you cannot do a good job because it's just not part of your gifting. And for me, I struggled with that a lot because I felt like a failure. I felt like I just wasn't good at stuff. I felt like I was doomed to have a miserable career. And the reality is I was just kind of in the wrong spot, doing something I wasn't gifted at. Now, that said, I don't think I was in the wrong spot in terms of God's will. I think He taught me so much through that. Mm-hmm. I think there's something really to be said for how you handle difficult situations, how you handle your attitude when you're in a job that you hate, how you handle your attitude when you have a boss that you don't like. I think these are all things that God is watching us to kind of see how we're going to handle it, to see if we're able to be promoted to the next level that He has for us.
Yeah. I also think that there is definitely a time and a place for just getting in a job and making the money that you need to provide for your family or provide for yourself, whatever situation. I mean, at the time when you first started working, you were just like, I'm out of college, I need a job. It's time to get a job, time to start.
Yeah, I don't think sitting on the couch for 5 years just waiting for God to tell you what to do is often the answer,
Yeah. For us, I think the thing that happened next was God just started laying stuff on Bob's heart and he just started obeying. Do you want to talk about this? The blog idea?
I think there's so much to obedience. I'm working on a book right now that is going to kind of encapsulate some of this, but I think there are so many blessings tied up in our obedience. And I think there's so many times when we look at something that God is telling us to do and we're terrified and we're scared of what it means and the sacrifice it's going to take. But the reality is that is the thing that is going to bring us to the blessing and bring us to what we want. That's going to bring us to the promised land. And it's easy to, just kind of get locked up in that fear. But I think obedience is one of those keys to opening up what God has for us. And specifically what you're talking about with getting the blog started, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in my case with the blog, this didn't look like a career path. This didn't look, especially in 2007, most people didn't know what a blog was.
You didn't know what a blog was.
I didn't know what a blog was in 2007. A friend of mine let me know. He explained it to me. But this wasn't something that I sought out after as a career path. This was something where I wanted to help people. And I was learning a lot about money, and I was learning a lot about what the Bible said about money, and I thought it'd be a good idea just to share that with people. And I didn't know writing a book seemed like too big of a task at the time, and so I didn't want to do that. But I just discovered this blog thing, and I'm like, this is a great way, hopefully, to kind of share what I'm learning, and hopefully it'll help someone else out there in the world. And so it started with me taking what I had been given and, just starting to do something with it. And then God was the one who took that to levels way beyond what I ever could have imagined or dreamed,
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about that is we're to the point now, like in hindsight, it looks like it was this big calling, and really it wasn't. It was not easy to miss.
Well, we didn't know.
It was just this, like you were just like, I kind of want to do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I mean, it was really that simple.
And I feel like God does this a lot where he will take this little thing that he's given us, this little desire, this little gift, and we just start doing something with it, and then he just multiplies it and turns it into something bigger. And in our case, like once we kind of started walking down that path, like I really didn't know that this was going to turn into a full-time thing. But he kind of led me to a point where I got this really big opportunity to walk in faith. And so basically about a year after I had started my blog, like we weren't making very much money with it all. Definitely not, I mean, couldn't pay half of our bills with it. And, maybe even car payment, really. And at that point, I got laid off from my job. And I felt like the Lord was leading me to do this full time, which didn't make much sense to me at all. And I couldn't, in my head, see the path of how this would ever turn into a full-time income. But it was something that I felt God was calling me to do. And we prayed about it, and we both felt good about it. We felt like this was the right step for us, even though it made no sense in the natural. And the reality is because we stepped out, because we obeyed, and God was in it, he just made it work. And I don't think I could have made it work in my own strength, but it was clear that he was calling me to do it, and therefore he had the means and the resources to make the thing work. And we got to watch, a really cool miracle over the next year. Within that next year, we were making more from the blog than my old day job, and which just made absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, and it was really cool because you being such a planner, you did not want to be in this situation where we couldn't pay our bills, but I feel like in that specific situation, God kind of called us out to trust him. And it was such a good opportunity to go, okay, well, hope this works out. We're just going to trust you, God. I mean, It really was a good opportunity for us. And I think it has served us well over the past, whatever it's been, decade more. That it seems like that kind of thing just keeps coming up over and over again, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where it's like we're planning as best as we can, and we're doing the best that we can.
It was the same when we were paying off our debt. I mean, so many things. It just does seem like he wants to know our heart in the whole thing, and he wants to know that we're trusting him. Mm-hmm. All right, another thing I want to add to this on kind of a practical level that helped me was kind of looking for the intersection, like when trying to decide what you want to do, what your career path is that you want, is to look for the intersection of things that you are naturally gifted at, and then the things that fire you up and get you excited or get you frustrated or passionate or whatever. And if you can find the intersection of those two things, that's an area where you can excel. Like when you are doing work and it doesn't feel like work, that's a really good thing. Like if you can do something that everybody else doesn't like or a lot of other people just don't like doing and you actually enjoy it, that is a key. That is something to pay attention to. You know?
I think a great example of this is doctors and nurses, where they get so passionate that that type of job, that's not for me.
Yeah, me too.
But I am so glad that there are doctors and nurses, and I just love that God has put people like that on the earth.
Accounting. I look at my accountant. I have an awesome accountant who is passionate about accounting. And it is just not something I am interested in, and I'm so thankful that he is. And I'm so thankful that God created us all differently, that we all have these desires and strengths and gifts.
Yeah.
And
And honestly, for me, running the business that Bob runs, I don't have those are not my strengths. My strength would not be to run a business by myself. But I'm really glad that you do.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously. But I do have other strengths. And so I guess what I'm saying is not everyone's called to run a business. And I think that that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, everybody has a different career path. Everybody has a role they're supposed to play. But just look for that area. Look for those things that light you up. And I always tell people to ask your spouse. Ask them what they think you're interested in. A lot of times you don't even see it because you're too close to it. But people who are close to you oftentimes can tell. They know what you spend your time on. They know where you spend your money. They know what websites you're looking at. And, and that'll help.
So I kind of think essentially what this question is asking a little bit is it's kind of about like finding your calling. Do you think?
Yeah.
And I kind of just want to say about that, I think that sometimes our calling can sound really like this big, huge thing that doesn't seem like it's attainable. And really, especially in our case, it was just very much like someone mentioned to him what a blog was, and he was like, oh, that sounds fun. I'll start a blog. And then it just kind
I
of...
had no idea.
It built
No idea.
on top of that. And it was just really simple. It was really practical. It was something you were interested in. It was so much less of a mystical, how do I know
Big,
if I'm going to figure this out? God, how am I going to figure out what you want me to do? And it just seems like God's like, I've already put it in you. The word says that our steps are ordered by the Lord. And I almost feel like if we're seeking him, it's kind of difficult to miss what he has for us.
Yeah. Now, that said, I think there's a lot of times where it's in front of our faces and we don't see it.
That's
true.
True.
And I think there's a lot of people who kind of fall into that category where, this is where your spouse comes into play, because a lot of times I think we miss it. We can't see the things we're actually gifted at. And we think, well, there's this person way over here who's better than me at it. And that doesn't mean that you aren't really gifted at it. And it's really easy to do that, especially in the online world where we see so many people who are better than us at something, and we think that means we're not uniquely gifted at it.
Yeah.
In reality, we are, but we're in an interconnected world, and we just happen to see, a good percentage of the other people who might be gifted at it.
And I think this goes right along with what you were saying earlier about things that you're naturally good at and that come easy to you, where it seems like, well, it's just an easy thing. This is easy for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's another key, is just because it's easy for you doesn't mean it's easy for everybody, and it doesn't mean that you don't have any kind of voice or help or impact to add to the world.
Yeah. All right, so that is a little bit of our story and how we kind of worked through this. I do recommend checking out our first podcast, which was with Jeff Goins, and we were talking kind of about the same topic. So I think if you're interested in that, check out that first podcast as well. And that is all for today. Appreciate you stopping by and watching or listening, and feel free to do the opposite one if you'd like. And have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. And if you haven't already, head over to SeedTime.com so you can get your free email course from us on how to master your money using biblical principles. So that's all for today. Have a great rest of your day. Adios.